world is fire and blood.
Everything is dependent on oil.
We are killing for gasoline.
The world is almost out of water.
Water. Now there's the water wars.
We knew going in was that this wasn't going to be a run-of-the-mill big movie. Here they come again. It's just going to be rock and roll.
This was an exciting one for me, with Джордж Міллер and his imagination and the worlds that he creates. Out here, everything hurts. You want to get through this? Pick up what you can and run.
This is an incredible world that's been created on a huge scale, with fascinating characters within it trying to survive amongst all helllanders.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
The movie is essentially a chase and a race. There's a certain rambunctious joy to the post-apocalyptic world.
George was taking pretty high concepts and created an epic with a huge amount of thought and care.
3, 2, 1, action!
What George really, really succeeded at is creating a world that will be extremely satisfying to his loyal fans who love the movies from the 70s, but also to a generation who might not know those movies.
About 12 years ago, I was on a long flight and the movie played in my head. And by the time I landed, I told my colleagues I've got another Mad Max movie.
No!
George is incredible in the sense that he can create something that's epic and huge in scale, and then suddenly it can go down to the smallest little detail.
Trying to dramatize a story that's in constant movement is very, very tricky. But to George, it's in the challenge of all of that, and that's when he comes alive.
George gave birth to the road movie, and now with bigger, better machines, just the same essence as they were in the originals, but they've just been amped up because we're now 30 years into when he started.
It's still very much that lone figure in search of his better self wandering a wasteland. Maks Rokatansky is a kind of heroic everyman. He was a cop in a very chaotic world and lost his family.
Max starts out as a beast in the wilderness.
There is a sense that there is a more noble human being inside, but we find him in a very savage state.
He's Mad Max. He's just awesome.
George said to me, I want to create a female character that can stand next to Max. Somebody that can fight as strong as he can, who can survive as well as he can.
The convoy was on a routine run to Gastown, but Furiosa's got her own agenda.
Furiosa, she's got a fierce mission, betraying the warlord, and the cargo is human and female. The 5 wives, they were his breeders.
She's gone off-road.
Where is she taking them?
Immortan Joe is the warlord of the wasteland.
This is somebody who will chop heads for not accepting that he was a god. I want them back!
Nux hears the war drums going because Furiosa just escaped with the wives.
That's my wheel. I'm driving.
Nux and all the war boys represent the young men who go to war with a sense they're almost immortal.
You! I'm aboard!
On escaping his situation, Max meets Furiosa.
We're not going back.
By necessity is part of Furiosa's plan, because there's no other option.
What do you see?
The Gastown boys. These 5 wives are healthy beings in this toxic world.
The wives are clean and we're shiny, and that's something that's very rare in this world.
The Immortan has treated them as his commodity. He's trying to breed an heir.
And action!
The wives want to escape the Immortan because they've been held captive pretty much most of their entire lives.
The Immortan loves those beautiful, beautiful creatures. And that terrorist who took them away from him, she's undermining the fabric of a society which is trying for the best.
That's my child! My property!
These women, they belong to a man who hurt her, and she's just had enough.
Hey, Martin, if I get on the rig, there's a way inside.
What is your name?
It's Nux. This is his big opportunity to go out in historic fashion.
Stop the rig! Return my treasures to me!
And then essentially keeps on screwing it up. A kamikaze pilot that can't crash a plane.
But they started off not trusting each other. Trust has to be earned in that environment.
They're different people, but they're both built to survive.
That's it, that's it.
A lot of the choices she makes have to be based on a hope.
You know, hope is a mistake. If you can't fix what's broken, you'll go insane.
When you've set up a world in such dire straits like this, there is no luxury for words.
These people had to go through action together and get across a dialogue that wasn't necessarily there.
You doubt that you can get something across without the use of words. And it's good to sometimes be forced out of your comfort zone.
But they speak only when it's necessary. There is a kind of language dependent on who they are. Basically, it all happens without words.
And action!
Tom has so much going on. He's a very quick mind. His emotions are very free. So when you have a stillness or when you need him to be very laconic, you still sense an intensity in there.
It's just an elated feeling when you get to work opposite an actor like Tom Hardy, who's coming in at a playing level that is really impressive.
What's your name? What do I call you?
You just really want to set the bar with him.
Does it matter? There are very, very few actresses on the planet who have such a tremendous strength of presence, but who also has a tremendous amount of vulnerability.
Sharlize is the only one who came to mind. She's able to transform herself as an actor. She's not afraid to go out there and be uncompromising. She is a warrior.
George was so excited about creating an anti-heroic woman who was really driven by these very human flaws and sets her into this motion that changes her life forever.
And them?
They're looking for hope.
What about you?
Redemption.
The one person who continued it from the first Mad Max was Hugh Keiss-Byrne.
Adrenaline.
I thought, he's not the toe cutter. He'll be the Immortan Joe. He'd be in a mask.
I am your redeemer!
Nick Hoult just nailed it. He's a wonderful actor. Extremely disciplined. He's very precise in what he does and understands. And Nick has that youth and that joy in him, even though the character is leading a pretty miserable life. The women themselves had to be pristine. They had to be beauties. They were the treasure. And not only that, they had to be 5 individuals. They were very distinct characters. You had to have complementary personas.
From Hugh right through to Sharlize and Nick and all the girls, everybody brought something which was really honest and truthful about them.
Feel the rumble of this big V8 chugging away underneath you. And then you see trucks full of these war boys flying past. Everyone's hyped up. There's flames, and then you're weaving in and out of all these bikes and trucks, saluting everyone and cheering the Immortan. It's not acting. I got chills completely shooting that stuff.
George had a lot of thought about the vehicles. We knew what some of the action of the vehicles had to be. So if you know that this particular vehicle has to get airborne, fire a flamethrower, do a double somersault, bow and exit stage right, then you've already got an awful lot of the recipe for what you're going to do. Given the vicissitudes of rolling, crashing, smashing, setting fire, we've required to build 130 vehicles all up.
The vehicles look very distinguished and different from one another.
The Giga Horse, this is our pair of 1959 Cadillacs. The idea behind it was that in a world where there's very little one of anything, the man who runs it all, our lead villain, would be the only man who could afford two of anything.
And because this is a movie on wheels, the Giga Horse is a throne. It has to be the biggest vehicle.
It's two V8 engines locked together into one shaft. What more can I say? It seriously rocks. When you're up the front of your Armada in that, there ain't no stopping you.
The War Rig is probably, after the human characters, the next most important character. It's the vehicle in which they flee across the wasteland.
It's quite creepy as well. It's got babies' heads stuck in it, like with spikes coming out of it. And the inside's quite intricate. It's got the Morton symbol on the roof.
I've never seen another film that has the same aesthetics as this one. It's just the detail that goes into the cars that the camera might never catch, and it all just adds to the vibe.
The sheer fun, probably the Doof Wagon, which started out as a little boy with a fife and drum and ended up as something slightly larger and more rock and roll.
If you've got a great armada of vehicles, all with big loud engines, no one's going to hear a bugle or a bagpipe. So we went for the flamethrower guitar.
The Doofmobile. That is an odd sight to see in the desert. This huge truck going through with guys sitting there beating the drums, and you'd see it flying past. You'd be like, what the hell is that?
The Armada's amazing with the dust and all in formation and lined up. There are so many vehicles. When you see them all thundering across the desert, it's a pretty impressive sight to say the least.
George wanted all of these vehicles made in order that he could destroy them, but with great love.
The reality distinguishes itself from CGI, computer graphics.
George flipped trucks and he blew things up. He shot live and he didn't stray from it.
It was like an army going out in search of a movie.
You watch the actual sequence being shot, it was fascinating and it's spellbinding.
This is a very kinetic movie. We worked in 3 units, often side by side.
Action! I've done a lot of action films, but none of them have the action that this one has, the continual action. It's absolutely ongoing.
My favourite is the Gastown boys who are all up on these polecat. It's like a metronome on the back of a truck.
Warriors can move from vehicle to vehicle and board like a pirate. I wasn't looking forward to it, but he strapped me on it anyway, and that was that. George will ask you to do things which may seem insane, and then they will turn into something really wonderful.
Being in Namibia allowed us a vast landscape in which to play and stage these events. There's no trees, there's nothing. It's just one big, wonderful landscape, which is perfect for the world we're trying to create, the wasteland.
You drive out into the middle of the desert, and there'd be like 700 people there on set.
Suddenly there's this tent city, like 3 football fields in size, with tents in the middle of a desert.
It is like being on another planet. It's impressive and scary and beautiful and all these things at once.
As far as the eye could see, was just desert. In the daylight, it would glow sometimes pink or orange, and it had the most incredible colours.
It was like being on Mars a lot of the time. You wouldn't see a soul for days. You'd just take off driving. They'd be like, right, we'll start up your engines, off we go, we're just going to keep on shooting.
I look at it, and part of me thinks I'm completely insane, even to have attempted it. And on the other hand, there's an enormous sense of pride at the work achieved.
Everybody wanted to achieve George's vision, really, which is one of the most dynamic visual spectaculars that I've ever seen.
It's by far the biggest thing I've ever been a part of.
Shooting over 120 days out there in the desert, in many ways was a slow motion replication of what the movie was about. It was Fury Road.